We might kick in and just to say thank you to everyone who's jumping in on time. More people will arrive as we go, but let's get started. Just want to acknowledge I'm on Cubby Cubby country on the Sunshine Coast and pay my respects to elders past and present and acknowledge the traditional owners of those lands, and feel free to message in the chat the country or nation that you're joining from. My name's Ant. I'm the interim EGM for the ALMBC, Australian Live Music Business Council, and we're here to talk about the state of play for the national music industry. And on the panel, we've got Brian Chladil from Oztix, who is also the treasurer for the ALMBC, Simone Schinkel from Music Victoria, Maggie Collins from the Australian Artist Managers Association, and Alison, Todd, and Benjamin Bourne from the Office of the Arts. So everybody's on mute. We do want to have a great conversation, but we just want to make sure that it's kind of moderated. So if there is something that you're keen to say, put something in the chat, and then we hope to bring a stack of you into the actual conversation as well. Feel free to turn your screens on or off. So the music industry really is one of the most fragile industries in the country and around the globe, and that's been something that all of us have been aware of for a long time. COVID and the effects of COVID have seemed to keep going on. Smash mentioned before the shutting down of cancelling of Groove in the Moo. It really is. It does feel as if we're in an incredibly tough place. So we're here to discuss that today and kind of really get a feel of who's out there doing what opportunities there are for funding and support, what organisations there are to get behind your business and help you, and what are some of the things that we can do to work together. I'll start with you, Maggie. Can you tell us a bit about yourself and your organisation and who you are and what you do?
Yes, thanks, Ant. Hello, everyone. I'm coming to you from the land of the Turrbal Yuggera Juggera people, Mianj in Brisbane, and I'd like to pay my respects to custodians of this country and any other First Nations people who may be on this call. Yes, so I have a long career in artist management, and a quick hello to my artist manager peers on the call who I see. Yeah, so I was a manager for 16 years up until very recently, where I've hung up my hat because of multiple environmental reasons, very much to do with the market, but also because I'm a mum of a 1 and a 3-year-old, and it's just all too difficult. But aside from that, I am the executive director of the Association of Artist Managers. We're the peak body for artist managers in Australia, and we recognise, and it's created by managers for managers. We recognise managers as the voice of the artist. We're very good organisers, so we tend to punch above our weight in terms of what things we're trying to achieve as an organisation and for managers and artists in this country, and also the wider ecosystem. So yeah, on a daily basis, we're working in advocacy, in professional development, and in member services for the AAM. Yeah, I think that's
brilliant. Thanks, Maggie. And Simone, tell us about you and what you do.
Thanks, Ant. Hi, all. I'm coming to you today from Wurundjeri country, stolen land. Very grateful to be here, living and working and enjoying music on country. I'm the CEO of Music Victoria. We're a peak body for music in the state of Victoria, kind of what it says on the tin. And we try and represent the whole ecology. And I think that's potentially one of our biggest challenges, as well as our greatest, opportunities, is to really navigate between venues, live, recorded, managers, and all the rest. We also coordinate with the AMEN network, having that federal agenda, I guess. But thanks for having me along.
Thank you, Simone. Smash.
Oh, hi everyone. I've been in the music industry all my life. I started out working in mates' bands, and I ended up being a tour manager and a band manager and a festival manager. And 20 years ago, my friend and I started Oztix, and I run Oztix with Stu, my mate, and obviously very involved in the setup of ALMBC when COVID came, to try and address a bunch of issues about who was representing who in the marketplace. So here we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Smash. And Alison and Ben.
Hi everyone, coming to you here from Ngunnawal country, and pay my respects to elders here and to my First Nations colleagues that might be on the line. I work in the Office for the Arts, which is the federal department that supports the Arts Minister, Tony Burke. I have a rather large remit, but it does include contemporary music. And I may have met many of you during the COVID time, because I was looking after a couple of the government's COVID injection programs for the sector, including RISE and a couple of other programs that we had here to support the arts sector during that really difficult time. I've only, I guess, assumed a responsibility for contemporary music as such in the last 6 months or so, but obviously through RISE and during the COVID time, did a lot of work with people in this industry. One of the other things that I have responsibility for is Creative Australia. So that's the former Australia Council. And that does encompass the newly established Music Australia Council, which is within Creative Australia. But it has a ministerial appointed committee. And so I've worked pretty closely with Creative Australia to get that council up and running. And I'll hand over to my colleague Ben so that he can introduce himself.
Hi everyone, Ben Bourne. I'm the director of the contemporary music team within AEST branch. My team manage a number of music-related funding programs that fall under the Australian Music Industry Package, several of which have now completed, but the ongoing program that we're working on is the Live Music Australia program, and I'm also responsible for a number of various policy issues, some of which are actions from the National Cultural Policy Revive, and working on a few things from assisting with visa issues to insurance, and working with our colleagues in the state and territory offices.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks, Alison. And I should note too, the apologies from Millie at Music Australia. She wanted to be here but couldn't. And also Australian Festivals Association, Mitch couldn't be here as well. So let's get cracking. Why are so many festivals and so many businesses in crisis? What's going on? Do you want to start us off, Smash?
All right. I think a bit of background. My gut, we're lucky because we see a lot of the market all at once. Oztix got a big spread of clients in lots of different areas, and so we do see what's going on a bit more maybe than just a normal business person working in the scene. A bit of background though, Australia's in full employment, or might as well be called full employment, and since COVID, we've just seen these worsening financial conditions, wage stagnation, cost of living rises, interest rising, creating mortgage stress. So, it's fairly obvious that people have less money to spend. And being discretionary discretionary spending for tickets and food and beverage, it's affecting ticket sales at venues, especially the small to medium venues. That I mentioned before, the big venues have the benefit of hosting these big international emerging artists or artists who haven't been here for ages, and so they're sort of a bit insulated from the effect because I guess average punter is making a decision based on, well, I've got to save up my money. I don't have as much money to spend that I used to, so I'll choose the things that are maybe a bit more special and less inclined to go and see things that they might say, oh, well, I can see that in 6 months' time, or I can see them in 3 months' time or 10 months' time. But I don't want to miss out on seeing this artist that I love, blah, blah, blah. So, of course, that's affecting it. The other thing is the small to medium-sized festivals are all been really affected because they're in that price point that's higher. And so unless the festival's got something really special on, it's just not selling. And I don't want to name names, but you can see Oztix has had about 15 of our clients go under this summer season, like in the last 6 months. And that, I'm not going to name names, but it's sad because it's like there was a lot of events that were successful for years and they were largely based on Australian lineups. And because they're mainly Australian lineups, they might have occasionally have the rare, if someone was touring someone and let them have access to that act. But, they're the ones that are actually suffering is the large Australian lineups because people just don't have the money to spend 150, 200 bucks. And because they go, oh, well, I'll just see them next year when I've got more money. So that's been really, really hard to see. And Grooving the Mood is obviously the biggest example of that. But it's a mystery why Grooving the Mood didn't sell. It's come off a long history of success. They had a couple of years off with COVID. There's a part of me that thinks Grooving the Mood's audience was always a bit young. They've had a couple of years of not playing, so they didn't get the new little brothers and sisters coming through. And last year was a bit of a fizzer for them, and so maybe this year there's just not the audience to go in the regions, or the regions are hurting more financially too, maybe, But
thank you. This would have been a question I asked to Mitch as well at Australian Festivals Association, but maybe I'll ask you, Simone, or Maggie, any research that you're aware of around young people not attending festivals and any kind of reasons for that?
I've just chucked in the chat a good article. I know there's been a bit of media coverage of late, but this one seems to be quite succinct in it explaining a whole range of issues. So that's there for you to read at your leisure.
Is that the same one that was run in The Guardian? There was one that started out and then I think it started at The Conversation and ran in The Guardian. There was a really good article. I wonder if it's the same one. Anyway.
Not sure. Sorry. Can't keep track of everything I'm reading these days where I find it, but I've popped that in the chat for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, look.
Do you want to talk about any of those topics?
Well, I mean, yes, it's the cost of living, it's the rising cost of doing business. From our point of view, in terms of member issues, which aren't just festivals, but it's about overlapping regulations, red tape, cost of compliance. I know policing's really quite expensive. More broadly, issues are around unsustainable careers, work conditions, and industry culture issues. Superannuation is just a complex matter that's overcomplicating everything. Other general issues raised by our members at this point in time are lack of diversity in the industry and on lineups. It feels like we're making good progress and then we've all kind of retracted a little bit and gone back to what we know will sell or what we think will work. Limited regional opportunities. It's really weighted in the cities and lack of touring networks. Competition for airtime, for local contact with local content, with the internationals, like it's all a bit all over the shop. And then, yeah, getting young people engaged. Music Victoria's just done some research because, yeah, we were hearing on the street that young people weren't in the audiences. And we're like, what's that about? Or at the festivals had the same audience attendance. People were coming back year on year, but they weren't tapping into any new audience, which is essential if you're going to be sustainable. So, yeah, we did this research and, yeah, there's definitely the cost of living and rise of cost of doing business, but also it's scary to think 11% of 16 to 18-year-olds don't even think about going to see live music. And that's compared to 8%. You know, like it's still small, but the rest of the, 19 to 35-year-olds, only 8% didn't think about it. But the younger demographic was 11%. And I'm like, something's gone seriously wrong. And how do we re-engage that so they're at least even thinking about it in the first place? But I'll chuck in the chat the research that we did, and you can check that out as well.
Brilliant. And Alison, you've just put something in the chat. Do you want to talk to that?
Yeah, I mean, I won't talk too much to it because Creative Australia are the people that have undertaken this piece of research, and I know that the release of it is imminent, but it was something that Minister Burke committed Creative Australia to doing through the National Cultural Policy. It is a specific bit of research around music festivals, and I know that the Australian Festivals Association has been involved in the development of that research. Based on my kind of initial conversations with them about the contents of the research, I'd say there's a lot of things that could be delved into more. And this may be a start piece that will then lead them to undertaking a bit more specific research in terms of, market and audience and some of those demographic issues that, people are talking about anecdotally, but I don't think anyone's kind of delved too deeply into it. Yeah.
Yes, and there is overseas research as well that is saying exactly the same things as everyone's saying here today, and talking about that generation that didn't go out to festivals and gigs and events during COVID and has kind of lost touch with the opportunity, and their younger siblings not going out as well. Maggie, is there anything else from a manager's point of view?
Simone, do you want to add to it?
I was just going to say the good news is that young people are interested and will get hooked, and then they'll come back time and time again. So, there's appetite there, but we need to get them there in the first place. So that's, a task that I put out to all of us.
Yeah. It's so that's so much to go over. I don't want to. It's hard to pinpoint something to really focus on. Holistically, though, and as a manager, we look at things holistically. This is all of this is a result of globalization and the homogenization of different art forms and content creation and consumption, right? And yeah, we're kind of living in a quiet COVID, if that makes sense, in that there's no event like this pandemic happening, but we're seeing such tough times. Like, managers are struggling to hold artists or keep their businesses going. And obviously that, that's a reflection of the artists and how they're actually going. And being artist managers, we focus on the holistic artist career. One of the biggest issues that's coming up time and time again with managers is discoverability, competition, working out, breaking through the algorithm. Like there's not the same gatekeepers that there used to be. And so we have to work at it from that end. And as I'm sure you're all aware, at least in Australia, live music is where artists make a big chunk of their money. And it's suffered during COVID, it's suffering now. And I think due to these articles and the research that's coming out, and I'm really curious to see the Creative Australia one when it does come out, is that it's quite clear that it is an effect from the pandemic that is coming out in with young people, that, you know, we're starting to see the change there. I don't know quite how to explain. I hope the research goes into why they're drinking less, because obviously that is playing a part on small venues running costs, and also like maybe a motivator why some venues are taking larger merch cuts, which once again just makes the artist suffer. Anyway, but I think like if we're looking at the research, it'll all point towards that. So when we're looking at solutions, unfortunately, there's problems here now, but there's not going to be any quick solutions. I feel like it's all going to be long term. It's going to be like trying to steer a massive cruise ship into another direction. And so that's just, but I mean, like, I'm really optimistic, especially with Music Australia being put in place, and a lot more funding opportunities are coming out now, which is awesome. But yeah, perhaps we all need to look into not what are the like funding opportunities. Yes, great, awesome, let's keep them coming. But as Simone was saying, like the more policy or red tape or regulation issues that probably need to be looked at as well.
And it'd be great to kind of talk about that if we get time as well. And so you would have seen Music Australia have just put out their first offering, really, which is around export, focused on artists and managers. And the next step following that will be other sectors in the music industry, we believe, labels, publishers, etc. So there does seem to be a great kind of forward momentum happening at Music Australia, and Alison and Ben, great to hear how closely Office of the Arts is working within Creative Australia and Music Australia, and to have that at the highest level, coordinating. So that's very exciting.
Yeah. Do you want me to just? I might just comment on that. We work really closely with Creative Australia, and in fact, I've been attending the Music Australia meetings, so council meetings. I was there yesterday with Millie and the council members. The minister, as you know, is a massive supporter of live music, and so that is huge. You know, it's like one hurdle. You know, and he has obviously had some success with his colleagues in terms of coming to the party and addressing some issues, or starting to address some of the issues, systemic issues. He has definitely tasked that Music Australia Council. Yes, they have got money to spend, and Millie's a great person to be there kind of managing that, of course. But the minister has also tasked them, it is part of their job or their role to actually examine some of these more long-term strategic issues as well, and provide the government with the best advice around how the government could assist in dealing with some of those issues. Again, you know, whether the minister's able to achieve those things, we will do our best to help with that. But obviously, I would be encouraging members to make sure that they're knowledgeable about who is on that Music Australia Council, and continuing the conversation with those people, as well as, you know, your local members and all of that, because the more information they can gather, the more people that they're hearing from, they have that direct line to the minister. And so I just encourage people to continue to engage with those people, because the minister is going to look to them for advice on some of these bigger strategic kind of issues.
That's great. And Millie informed me the other day that in the previous Creative Australia round, there was Music Australia money there that enabled a further 30 music applications to be funded, which is already amazing. And yeah, we're really excited about those future offerings. And we'll come back to you, Alison and Ben, to talk about the Live Music Australia funding for venues open now. But just before we do that, I thought we might talk about some festivals that have been successful. So the Laneway Festival, we've got Ali here from Perth. Justin Rudge is here from Port Fairy Folk Festival. Justin, did you want to say anything about, you know, how you've been able to maintain your success and you know, any kind of comments about that?
Is it?
Thanks, Anne. Hi, everybody. You know, a great deal of good luck, a 47-year-old history, a really loyal audience, probably a specifically planned move this year to go back and re-engage with the older audience. We saw that, you know, the 20s, 30s, 40s were going to drop off this year, so we booked a slightly different lineup, which has seemed to work. I think that the challenges, though, are still there. You know, we're going to be okay, but we're not going to make any money. The margins are now razor thin. The risks are really high. You know, I guess the challenges for us this year is we applied for 19 rounds of funding and got $0 this year. Sponsorship dropping away, increased costs of, you know, our liquor license quadrupled, our police costs doubled. You know, we're doing our best, but, you know, I think one of the challenges for us is also how to message that. Like, there's so much negativity in the press around all of these cancellations and stuff, which we understand. And, you know, so everybody seems to go, oh, Port Fairy, great, no problem. And it's like, nah, heaps of problems, all the same problems. Just probably a couple of things in our favour, I guess.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, go Smash.
Sorry, I'll just quickly jump in just to make a comment. So I was involved with Livid. That's how old I am. And we used to always think that coming out of Livid and then Big Day Out, I worked at Big Day Out for 20 years, and coming out of those things and Soundwave was that the festivals that were successful were built on community originally. You know, it was a small festival that had a community behind it, and then it grew and grew and grew. And obviously Big Day Out became monstrous, so did Soundwave. But the reason they imploded is because they got too big, to be honest. And it's a simple version of what really happened, but yeah, they got too big and unmanageable. So it's those events that have got that long-term community basis that are sort of surviving, and the flash in the pan ones aren't. And I guess it all gets back to the golden rule of festivals, which is your festival's only ever going to be as good as your lineup. And you can pretend as much as you want that you've got the amazing model that works and the mysterious formula for booking. But the reality is, if you don't have hot bands, people aren't going to buy tickets. End of story. Okay?
And do you think, Smash, this idea of multi-genre festivals compared to single genre festivals, and the single genre festivals just seem to be slightly more stable? Is that true?
I don't know, because I look at Good Things Now, which is one of our clients, I'll add, and I do have an involvement in helping them. And the thing is that, you know, that came out as a replacement for Soundwave in the hard rock sort of side of things. With Knotfest entering the market, they freaked out and went, well, now we've got a direct, very wealthy competitor. Why don't we pivot a bit and sort of mix up the genres a bit? And it's been very successful. So, you know, they've gone down, they've added some heritage Australian stuff, and they've added some modern Triple J stuff, not too much, but as long as it's a bit on the heavy side, not on the nice and EDM side. And then doing things like every year they just pull a rabbit out of the hat. Like they had the Veronicas, everyone was like, what are you thinking? And it went off, and, you know, it became a social media storm. And, you know, they had TISM, first show back in 20 years, and all this sort of always trying to, and the Japanese band, the all-girl Japanese band were fantastic. And that, you know, so they've always managed to pull something special that's over there on the side as well as like the icing on the cake. And I think it's a big lesson to be learned there. You know, you need your big headlines and you got to pay for them, but it's what else you do. It's not just going, okay, now I've got my two headliners, I can rack and stack the lineup with whatever's cheapest. It doesn't work.
But isn't there another challenge as well that kind of feeds into this, that is, you know, the Australian dollar and the cost of an international and the lead time in booking them and the changing appetite and who's hot is not hot by the time your festival comes around. So, yeah.
It's exactly, I wish I could quote the figures, but I can't. But there's an exact correlation between the budget spent on the band and the amount of tickets sold. The bigger the budget, the bigger band you can get, the more tickets you will sell. And it's sad outcome of capitalism, but that's at the end of the story. You know, you only get the big bands if you pay, you know, and then you can pay a lot of money for really big bands and nobody goes. And there's been a few of those as well. So, you know, I don't think there is a magic formula. I think it's all about the lineup. And I said that before.
And that issue, Simone, about Australia being so far away from the rest of the world, I've heard on the grapevine about Edinburgh Festival choosing less Australian acts this year because of the carbon cost, and that they have to account for that back to their funding bodies and sponsors and governments.
And even that it's better for acts just to do the sideshows and not the festivals, you know, and so that works for their business model, but not the festival business model. So we're kind of competing against ourselves in some sense. On a good news note, the Victorian government do have an election commitment to fund small to medium festivals and large ones even across the state. So we're looking forward to that rolling out soon because it was a while ago, the election. So yeah. There's money on
Excellent.
the table there.
And what does that involve, Simone? And we'll come to local government in a minute. I see we've got Fiona Duncan online from Geelong as well, also manager of Spiderbait. We might come to you in a minute, Fiona, if that's all right too. But go, Simone, what else is happening in Victoria and what's the Victorian government doing?
Yeah, it's kind of just all the election commitments we are hoping to see rolled out. We have had a change in minister that really slowed that being rolled out quite as soon as, you know, it was announced. But, you know, we expect music works to be coming, this festival's funding up to 50K, and that's a 4-year program. They've also committed to putting on 10,000 gigs across the state. All of this stuff also has a 25% has to happen regionally detail on it. I think there's also been a bit of a blow without the Com Games, but a redistribution of some of that money and how it's going to work. But yeah, just really want to see those things land and roll out and hit the pockets of our industry because, you know, the budget's there and committed. But I think, yeah, we've definitely been putting the pressure on, just going, it's still so hard and we're still at the mercy of all these dynamics. We don't expect any sort of quick fix. We realize these are band-aid solutions and that we need to work on audience development. And, you know, I think there's a bit of business evolution that needs to happen. We can't make people drink if they don't want to. So how are we going to evolve that business model over time? I talked to the guy who used to run parlor gigs and he's like, yeah, my business model went under because it was doing shows in people's houses and then a pandemic hit. It's like no one wants to invite anyone into their safe space. So, you know, trying to work with people to navigate what that new offering might be. And I wish I had the answer, but I think it's something real. I know venues are now looking at restaurants to subsidize, you know, like what are different models and structures that are actually going to allow us to be sustainable, that isn't going to need constant topping up by a government. We need longer term solutions than just band-aid fixes with cash, but we'll take that in the meantime. Don't worry.
And we'll talk just a bit more about venues in a second, but let's go to Fiona around local government. What's happening in your region as compared to the state and federally?
I guess, you know, it's all the same, and regions have like just all the extra challenges on top of everyone else, and it's just extra challenging. So what we're doing, and we've got budget, you know, like everyone, all our budgets have been made more efficient, which we all have budget cuts. So we're really looking at what we can do to support on the ground. We see audience development is such a key factor. Something we're seeing, and I don't know about the national scenario, but under 18 kids, they need shows to go to and they don't have them. Like there's so many regulations. Venues won't do under 18 shows. How can we develop audiences when kids at that age when they're keen can't get to shows? So we're not developing new audiences. They don't have access to enticing shows. Where I'm Sean Adams, my colleague here. We're working on a project together with the Live Music Office, and Live Music Office is doing a lot of work with local governments around the country and how to look at diversifying options for artists going into other businesses as well as venues, and also that way of how we can access audiences who might not want to go into venues, how they might go into libraries, cafes, and just really trying to show how music can happen in different ways and in different places. So we're just really looking at capacity building, audience development, and it's really getting back to those really basic levels and that really development sort of time where you know, what can we do? It's not sort of delivering one of the big festivals. It's really like how we can use sort of money better. Just an observation as well, just with my Spider Babe hat on, playing some shows recently, talking to some event organisers, what they're seeing is even if they're selling tickets and getting people in the door, you know, they might have the emerging artists on earlier. What they're finding now is people are not coming for those emerging artists. They're coming when they know the band. So they're getting people in the door, but they're needing people to be spending money all day to actually be making money. So it's the ticket sales, but it's also what's happening on the ground during the day. And so that's I see that as a real issue as well. If people aren't turning up for those kind of developing emerging artists, how are they ever going to develop new audiences? And then it's getting back to, you know, people are going to program, as Smash was saying, it is about the lineup, but they're going to get more and more conservative. The heritage artists, which yes, I manage one, so that's, you know, we're in a good position at the moment because we're sort of safe bet for people, but it's not talking to new audiences and it's not developing new audiences for artists that haven't had that long-term time to develop audiences.
Thanks, Fiona. And feel free if anyone's got any questions to put them in the chat, or you can send me a private chat if you like. And we're very happy to get you on to say something as well. Lots of mentions of venues, particularly that interesting idea of more under 18 shows to try and bridge that gap between young people not attending events and festivals. That's interesting idea. And Simone, venues, you know, are really copping it in Victoria. Do you want to talk about that and anything that you are doing to mitigate that? Particularly anything coming up, any live things coming up in the next few weeks?
Well, the insurance issue is top of mind. It has been on our radar for, you know, the whole time I've been in the role, which is 3 years, but obviously pandemic crisis overran that a little bit, but now it's just reached a whole new level kind of tipping point that goes with the, you know, cost of living crisis, with the economic climate, you know, like it's all these things. And I feel like insurance is the straw that's breaking the camel's back. And we are seeing venues close. So that's really devastating. One thing, obviously, we've been working closely with ALMBC across, you know, many years, particularly on this insurance issue, because it's not just a Victorian specific one, but, you know, potentially globally. But really for us in Victoria, it's now reached a ridiculous point, and we are now calling on the Victorian government to allow access to the Victorian Managed Insurance Authority, which they did actually allow our industry access during COVID for event cancellation insurance. And I'm not sure if other states even have this ability to access such a thing, but we're great that we've got it. And so now we want to tap into it again. We're saying thank you for last time and how profitable was that for you to insure us. So let's do it again. But to do that, we're trying to prove market failure. And that's a formal economic term that we have to prove. And you also have to have gone through all the motions of trying everything else before you can make that call, which is about group buy-in, it is about risk mitigation, it is about skills development, all these other things that are all things we've all been doing for some time. But yeah, that kind of tipping point goes, well, you want to hold on to your reputation, you're probably going to have to support some of these and move forward, because at a 500% increase, it's just not viable. Yeah.
And we've got Andrew Bassingthwaite here, who's our insurance expert in the ALMBC. Just before we jump to you, Andrew, Georgie Barker's got a question. Has there been a result of the review of permits that DJSIR ran last year? And so I've quickly Googled place of public entertainment permit, and that's from the Department of Job, Skills, Industry and Regions in Victoria. So I'm not sure, do you know anything about that, Simone?
I'm not sure about that specific one. I can check up for you, Georgie, but I do know that the red tape more broadly inquiry that was about planning, EPA, liquor licensing, local government, and who has authority to make what calls in what context, that one has been that review we're waiting on a report, but they've since actioned us to provide a more detailed breakdown of how ridiculous the rules are and how they overlap. And that's come direct from the Department of Premier and Cabinet. So hopefully with their blessing, we don't just create a map that shows all the problems, but that they actually address it and get the right people in the room. Because we have things like the EPA can set a noise limit, but then local council are enforcing it, or the police are enforcing it without the tools or expertise to know what's right or wrong or otherwise. So just trying to get some real clarity around that.
Amazing, thank you. And Baz, insurance. What's happening in insurance, and what have you been doing to help mitigate those issues nationally?
Right, yeah, hi all. Yeah, so a lot's been happening in the insurance space. Essentially, since pre-COVID, the insurance industry has focused a lot of attention on public liability insurance, and they've been comparing how much they collect in their premiums versus how much they've been paying out in claims. And unfortunately, there's been a large gap between they're paying out a lot more in claims rather than the premium that's been coming in. So two things that have happened from that. One, the prices have gone up quite dramatically, in some cases 12-fold. So we've seen a $10,000 premium go to $120,000. But the Australian insurers have exited the market. So basically what we need to have is, in an industry to get prices down, is to have competition. And unfortunately, because there's no insurers in Australia that want to get involved, we're relying on overseas offshore insurance syndicates, binders to fill that gap. So they've got pretty much control of the market in many respects. However, what we've been able to do with guidance from two insurance brokers that we've engaged with in the ALMBC is to get premiums where it was $120,000 quoted from an Australian insurer. We've got them covered at about $60,000. So we've managed to get some great savings in place. However, it's still a 5 to 6-fold increase from what they were used to. Now, unfortunately, I think the industry has had a big catch up. So they've suffered losses over the last few years. Now they're catching up on that loss premium. Is it going to go up again another 5-fold? I don't think so. I think that the market has probably hit its mark now. We've got the right level of premiums in place. Are premiums going to go down? No, not for the foreseeable future. So there's a couple of reasons behind that. One is that, as I mentioned before, there's no capacity, there's no competition within the Australian marketplace. So I think premiums are going to hold at that level. So really now what we're falling back onto is an education piece. One is to ensure that we have less claims that are coming through live music venues. And if there are claims, to manage those claims more effectively to reduce those costs. So we've got a few things that are in play with the ALMBC. We've got a risk survey that's been launched, but we've also got a Now You Can system, which is essentially a venue management system to manage your risks on a day-to-day basis and to record any incidents, whether it be physical to human or risk elements within a business. So there's a lot happening in the background. Hopefully that will be launched out very soon. We're in testing phase still, but somewhere in the second quarter we should have that launched for the industry.
Thanks, Baz. Any other comments around insurance from anyone?
Well, I think just adding into the mix that we've not only seen venues public liability insurance, but now it's impacting their business insurance, and it's in artists, and anyone who walks into the venue now has to have their own insurance. So the insurance companies are certainly raking it in from all angles from our industry. So I just feel like we've mitigated so much of that by dividing and making sure everyone's separately covered. Yeah, it's just a hard pill to swallow, I think.
Yeah, look, I agree.
And a
It is-
long-term problem that we can't turn around overnight, and we're going to lose people along the way.
Yeah, it's not a quick fix, unfortunately.
I just want to make a comment again. Sorry, I warned you all. I talk too much. Very quickly, in New Zealand, they have a limited liability scheme. So public liability is limited. So everything's got a price. It's a fixed. If you break an arm, it's this much. If you twist your leg, it's that much. And that limited liability scheme means insurers know exactly the costs they're up for, which means the price of insurance is dramatically lower because the risk is finite. It's not, whereas over here, public liability insurance, you got to get insurance for 20 million. So they might have to pay out on 20 million. So see what I mean? So I think a big step to help our problems long-term would be if the government were able to change the public liability laws and have it.
I'll add on to that. Yeah, so statutory reform is one of the things that we're looking at. We have been liaising with the Insurance Council of Australia on that very topic, but we're a little bit different to New Zealand in that New Zealand has one, in terms of the public and statutory limitations, is just on one government, federal, whereas each state in Australia controls their own statutory liability level. So if we want to get something changed, we've got to go to 7 different government authorities and try and get that changed. Right. One thing which is important to note that if people do get injured, we want to make sure that they're fairly looked after and fairly compensated. And I agree that the one size fits all works in most cases, but there is the occasion where, for example, there was in a Perth venue, a neurosurgeon fell downstairs, cracked his skull, and can't practice medicine anymore. So he was making $1 million a year. So that's why I think the governments will be reticent in putting a capped fees in. But I think it's more about if you manage the claim effectively, it won't go to lawyers, and then the lawyers won't go for the highest amount and add on their legal fees, which is what's been impacting Australian insurers in the last 5 to 10 years.
Alison and Ben, any comment on that, and then share some information about Live Music Australia if you'd like?
The Live Music Australia program, sure.
Do you want to say anything about insurance at all?
Yeah, well, so, I mean, we're obviously not the lead Commonwealth agency on issues such as this, but we do continue to advocate through Treasury and Austrade, who have been working with industry associations and insurers and businesses on issues of accessibility and affordability. They've been holding workshops to try to increase linkages and information between insurance and brokers with a focus on public liability. One interesting thing to note is that in September 2023, the Assistant Treasurer led a delegation to Europe to meet with global insurers, and they, amongst other issues, focused on public liability, encouraging overseas insurers to enter back into the market. So we're going to continue to work with Treasury to try to see if anything comes from that. But
and then also we'll talk about Live Music Australia.
Yeah, so one thing with Live Music Australia is a $20 million funding program over 4 years as part of the Australian music industry package. So the original focus of the program is on small to medium-sized live music venues. However, we have extended the program in 2 of our rounds to provide support for music festivals. In 2022, we expanded the guidelines of the program to include event insurance as a cost that could be claimed under the program, and that was in recognition of the economic vulnerability that we were hearing from our stakeholders. We are in the final round of the Live Music Australia program, so round 8 is currently open and closes on the 12th of March. We have seen quite a significant jump in contact from live music venues, as this will be focusing on venues. So a lot of calls coming through from venue owners. We're expecting to get quite a large number of applications, and from discussions that we've been having, it's issues like insurance right on the top of their pile. The operating costs that they've got are just becoming overwhelming. So, as I said, that closes on the 12th of March, and
I would just add, I want to be upfront. This is the last lot of money that we've got to spend under Live Music Australia. It's only $2.5 million. It's not massive. The federal government is considering its federal budget. The budget will be delivered in May, it will make some decisions, I'm sure, about, with this program ending, what it might want to do going forward. But in the meantime, in addition to that program, there is obviously money within the Music Council bucket at Creative Australia, and they'll continue as they get up and running to make announcements, as Ant said, about what future funding opportunities there are for all parts of the sector that are looking for support.
Brilliant. Thank you. And thanks, for your advocacy on behalf of the industry as well. And it's very much appreciated. I know it must be tough sometimes being in government.
We can't do it. We can't do it without having these conversations with you and your members. We need that. We need to have these conversations because without that information, we can't do the advocacy. We can't do the policy work. So it's really beneficial for us to hear your views and hear what issues the membership is facing, because we will advocate and work hard for as long as possible to get the investment that people need to keep the sector going.
Brilliant. And thank you to you too, Alison and Ben, and also Maggie and the work of the AAM, and Simone, the work of Music Victoria, and Smash, your work at the ALMBC. Any closing comments from any of you? Smashes.
Send an email to Alison's department. She can't ask you to do that, but do the advocacy work. Read between the lines of what she was saying.
Right to the minister, because ultimately that correspondence comes to us. So, Minister Burke, and it's good to be doing it through peak bodies, because I think sometimes there are different parts of the industry that will have differing viewpoints. That makes it easier, I think, for government sometimes to say, oh, well, I've got this person saying something different. I think if you can join up and make make your case through peak bodies and membership groups, it does actually makes it easier for the government to respond in some way.
Thanks. I just want to finish by saying two things. I know how busy everyone is, and I really appreciate everyone on this call, because it shows that you actually care about the industry. So thank you. And secondly, Oztix is developing a program to fund regional activity, and we like the idea of funding regional activity and underage activity. So, for example, if your band's playing a gig, we'd like to look at funding the all ages gig in the afternoon, or help offset the costs with the venue, or come to some arrangement. So, because we really believe that audience is missing in the youth market, and we really want to bring that up, and we can put some money behind it. So if you could spread the word on that, and if anyone would like to comment or have any ideas, just shoot me an email. That'd be awesome. Or if you can contact me through Ant or through the ALMBC website, and then.
Brilliant. Thank you, Smash.
No worries.
Well, Maggie, did you want to say anything?
I think the biggest because I've been I've been taking this in as much as I've contributed. The biggest thing is in audience development, at least from a manager's perspective, from the artist perspective. And yeah, as I said before, this is going to be a long-term thing, but if we keep chipping away at it, hopefully, as I said before, this was like a quiet COVID. Hopefully this ends too, and that at some point we can get back to a more healthy market.
Brilliant, thank you. Baz, I think you wanted to say something?
Yeah, dear. Just finally on, it's you as well. Ant and I are going to be in Melbourne on the 14th of March. We've got doing a session on insurance in the industry, hosted by Music Victoria. So if everyone's down in Melbourne, come on and join us in Collingwood, I believe, and we'll look forward to seeing you there.
Brilliant, thank you. Yes, and we'll the ALMB will keep doing a monthly online session focusing on different issues as they arise, and the session with Music Victoria is our first in-person session that we hope to do every 2 months. So I've got something locked in for July with Music NT, and later in the year with Music ACT as well. And yeah, working with the other state bodies to make that happen in wherever you are. So thank you. We're right on 1 p.m. Really appreciate everyone's time. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks to you, Anne, for hosting, and ALMBC as well.
No worries. We'll have this
Bringing us
up
all
on
together.
our website in the next 24 hours.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.